All right, guys, we're going to do a quick lesson on fractions and percents and being able to convert from one to another. Again, I want to just re-emphasize that percent is based on 100. So percent is per 100. Okay, that's really important when we're going from a decimal or a fraction to a percent, to just keep remembering that it's based on 100. That's really going to help you out. All right, so if I'm going from a fraction to a percent, there's two ways to do it. One is really easy, and the other one just takes a little bit more time. Unfortunately, the easy way doesn't always work. So I'm going to start with the easy way, the first way. If I want to go from a fraction to a percent, the first thing is, this is the one that doesn't always work. It works a lot of times. You want to look at your denominator and see if you can find an equivalent fraction with 100 as your denominator. Okay? The reason I'm looking for 100 as my denominator, because remember, percent is based on 100. If I find my denominator is 100, then my numerator is simply my answer, is my percent. All right, let me do some examples, and I think it'll make a little bit better sense to you. So if I have 2/5, I want to find an equivalent fraction with 100 as my denominator. So, all right, so 5 times 20 is 100. So multiply my top by 20, and that gives me 40. That's 40 out of 100 percent, so per 100. So that's just 40%. See how easy that was? So if I can get a denominator of 100, then that numerator just ends up being my percent. All right, let's give another example. 7/10. So you want to look, can I get a denominator of 100? 10 times 10 is 100. So if I multiply the top by 10, that gives me 70. So 70 out of 100 percent, that's just 70%. All right, so 18 over 20, can I get a denominator of 100? 20 times 5, so multiply the top by 5, and that gives me 90. So that's 90%. And the last one, 13 over 25, can I get a denominator of 100? Yes, I can multiply by 4, so multiply the top by 4, and that gives me 52. So 52 out of 100 is the same as 52%. Okay, so again, if my denominator, I can get it to an equivalent fraction of 100, then I can easily figure out my percent. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause the video. I want you to write down the notes here. So the first way is I want to find an equivalent fraction with 100 as my denominator. The second step is, if my denominator is 100, actually you can kind of forget that part because obviously you did get 100. So you can start right here. Oops, you can start right here. Your numerator will be your percent. So you're going to add a percent sign. Okay, don't just put a percent sign here. Rewrite the whole problem, or rewrite the answer there, because this is my final answer. All right, so write down your steps, write down your examples, pause the video, and then come back, and we'll go to the second way. All right, the second way, which I said because some problems don't always work. So let me show you an example. So if I have an eighth, if I wanted to get 100 as my denominator, that doesn't work for it. So I've got to have a different way. So here is my other way. So I'm going to divide the numerator by the denominator to get a decimal. So again, if you remember from previous notes, once I have a decimal, then it's very easy to change a decimal to percent. I simply move my decimal 2 places to the right. So do you see how all of this is coming together now, what we've been doing? So if I have 1/8, I'm going to divide the numerator by the denominator. So 8 goes into 10 one time. Bring down another 0. 8 goes into 20 twice. That's 16. Bring down a 0. Oops. 8 goes into 45 times. I can stop now. Bring up my decimal. So now once I have my decimal, I'm going to turn my decimal into percent. Remember, the rule is, if I'm going from a decimal to a percent, I simply move my decimal over 2 places, and it's 12.5%. That's my new percent. So do you see how these conversions, 1/8 is the same as 0.125 or 125 thousandths, which is the same as 12.5%. Okay, that's the equivalence. They're all the same thing. All right, let's do another example. 9/40ths. All right, so 40 goes into 90 twice. Bring down a 0. 40 goes into 100 twice again. 80. Bring down my next 0. And 40 goes into 205 times, and it finishes here. Bring my decimal straight up. So here's my decimal, 0.225 or 225 thousandths. Move my decimal 2 places to the right, and it becomes 22.5% is my percent. And let's try one more. 1/6. So 6 goes into 10 one time. Bring down my 0. 6 goes into 46 times. Bring down a 0. 6 goes into 46 times again. Uh-oh. You see how I'm getting a repeating decimal here? All right, so I can stop because I know I have a repeating decimal here. Bring my decimal up. But because I want to turn this into a percent, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places. 1, 2. So I'm going to round that to the nearest percent. So that would be 17%. Or if you wanted to be a little bit more exact, 16.7%, because that would have rounded to the nearest. That would have rounded to a 7. So either one of these answers would work. If you had a whole percent, 17%, that would be great. 16.7. I would have taken either one of them. So do you see how this way, unfortunately, is a little bit more difficult because you have to do the division, which, of course, I know you all love to do division. But this way is much easier. So always look for the denominator first to see if you can get that denominator of 100, an equivalent fraction. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause that video. You're going to write down the second way to go from a fraction to a percent. So you're going to write, number 1, divide the numerator by the denominator. This gives you your decimal. And then the second one, you're going to change the decimal to a percent. You don't have to write this part right here because it's, unless you just want to, because it's already in your notes packet. Okay? So pause the video, write down these 2 steps and your examples, and then we will move on to going from a percent to a fraction. So pause the video and come back when you're ready. All right, so now let's go back. Let's go from a percent to a fraction. So again, I'm going to say percent is per 100. You're going to get tired of me saying this. All right. So if my percent is already based out of 100, then all I need to do, this is the easiest one. You're simply going to put the percent over 100 and simplify. That's all you need to do. The only problem some of you might have with this is that simplifying part. Okay. So 55% simply means 55 out of 100, or 55 per 100. Now I need to simplify, so I'm going to divide by 5. That gives me 11 over 20, and I'm finished. 36% means 36 out of 100. Remember, you're always just putting it over 100. I'm going to divide by 4, and that gives me 9 over 25, and I'm finished. All right, this one's a little different. 126%. It's still out of 100, which is per 100. So you still put it over 100, even though this is a 3-digit number. So obviously, 126 over 100 is more than 100%. So I'm going to have a whole number here. So the first thing I want to do is turn this into a mixed number. So 126 over 100 is just 1 and 26 over 100. So now I just need to simplify the fraction part. So that's going to be a whole number 1. I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to divide it by 2, which will give me 13. Divide by 2, that gives me 50ths. So this is 1 and 13/50ths. Okay. Also be careful with, let's say, maybe if I just have a single percent, 4%, it's still 4 over 100. So when I simplify that, divide by 4, I'm going to get 1/25. So when you have a percent, you're always putting it over 100, no matter how many digits there are here, no matter how many digits. Okay? All right, again, pause the video. You're going to write down the directions. So you're going to put the percent over 100 and simplify or reduce. Write down the examples. And if you have any questions on these, please talk to me tomorrow. Go ahead and do the ones that say your turn, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.